Have you seen these true crime shows? They are all made differently, but all of these shows have received criticism about how they are made and how they depict their subjects. So should we be rethinking how we watch true crime? Some have quit the genre entirely. I'm personally a big fan, and I've wondered about this. I spoke to a former crime reporter who said we should be assessing what we're watching. She says many victims and families can be re-traumatized by shows that don't involve their consultation or consent.
Ask yourself, who is impacted by this crime? Then ask yourself, where is their voice in this? Were they a part of the production? Did they give their consent for their story to be told in this way? Did they have agency over the way their trauma was shared on the public platform?
She also says to look up who's made the show and why they are amplifying the story.
Could it lead to an arrest? Is this an unsolved investigation? Could it lead to better supports for victims and survivors of traumatic events? Or is it purely rubbernecking?
Another thing to consider is the genre itself, the types of stories being told and who they privilege. You might have heard the term missing white women syndrome. It was coined by PBS journalist Gwen Ifill. It describes how crimes against white women receive a disproportionate volume of media coverage compared to BIPOC communities. A culture critic I spoke with brought up the example of Gabby Petito. Her murder in 2021 was heavily covered on TikTok, and several docuseries came out the year after her killing.
It does have effects outside of our media consumption and informs our ethics, our morals, our values, how we look at cases outside of the realm of consuming content about them. It informs how we look at victims. It informs how we look at the killers themselves.
Then there are the production systems behind these stories. A lot of true crime shows that cover Canadian cases are produced by production companies outside the country. Take the example of this Netflix doc, which covers the case of Jennifer Pan out of Ontario. It was a co-production with companies in the UK and Canada. A journalist who covered the Jennifer Pan story in 2015 told the CBC that she felt the story was covered through a white lens, and for an audience of white Americans. A true crime consultant told me that's often the result of how projects are funded in Canada.
We either have an unwieldy international co-production involving some Canadian production companies and Canadian talent, or it gets taken over by Americans who, quite frankly, put their spin on it.
Self-awareness is one thing, but should you feel bad about watching true crime?
People are aware that this is a vice of some kind. People are aware that much of it is good, much of it is educational, much of it is entertaining and responsibly entertaining, but a lot of it is junk food that you binge.
We're only human. I think these cases are taboo and in a lot of ways are things that we shouldn't be interacting with, but it's that thing where we're always interested in the things that we shouldn't be. So if you know that people are going to be interested in them, give them the tools to better interact.